Hello everybody and welcome to the Amazon European Masters. We're into the final day of groups and we're going to find out the last two teams to make it through to the quarterfinals. Viper and Jamada here to bring you the first set of games today. Jamada, before we look forward too much to the games that we're going to be watching today, yesterday was pretty wild, you know?
Yesterday was wild. I think when you consider the expectations we had going into the day, completely kind of shattered with Bifrost coming out with... I mean, we said it yesterday because we were casting the game. No idea what these guys were eating between week 1 and 2 for the groups, but they just smashed Fnatic Team Kesso. And I mean, I will say there's obviously the caveat of Fnatic Team Kesso did look a bit shaky, you know, throughout the day as well. It wasn't just, you know, this game, but credit to Bifrost for really coming out and looking so decisive in so many of their games, or specifically that Fnatic game. Team Esker, of course, then went on to face BDSA. And unfortunately, the game did not go their way. They came out with their Yone and, of course, the Nocturne, but they couldn't really get the ball rolling. It felt like, you know, they got one successful gank off in the mid lane, but then, again, it's the kind of mid-jungle where you definitely want to be snowballing, and they never found the right kind of team fights with those great, massive AoE ultimates to really, you know, solidify any kind of tangible lead.
I mean, Esker, I think, endemic a little bit of the almost transitional phase that we're seeing the Ultra League in, especially at European competition. It's not been the strongest showing for a couple of seasons from them right now. And again, this time around, they lost out here to Fnatic TQ, who, as you mentioned, were a little bit questionable. But in this game, you can't question the Gnar.
Yeah, no, can't question the Gnar. Oscar got such a massive lead, and it was basically just all by himself as well. And like you were saying, I think, you know, whilst, yes, the results for the Ultra League aren't particularly looking the best inside of the Amazon European Masters in, you know, the most recent seasons, I think when you look at a team like Esker and you say, like, the average age, I've had to take a guess, is about 18, because I think their oldest player is 19. So many young players on that roster. I'm glad that they were able to, at the very least, make it to EUM, and then, you know, hopefully they will come back in summer looking stronger with an extra split under their belt. And of course, this game ended up being a bit of a banger as well, Bifrost versus BDSA, where Bifrost here ended up securing their spot at the top of the group. Or it's actually the Esker game, I suppose.
Yeah, and I mean, for Bifrost coming in top of the group, second seed out of the NLC, great performance from them and surprised a few people. Not everyone, though. I saw Initialized Nightmare chatting about how they always had big faith in these guys. But as you mentioned, the young age of players from Esker, definitely a lot of promise in them. You look at Harpoon, Roscoe as well. Definitely stood out to me as someone who's got a bright, bright future. BDSA, of course, losing out here to Fnatic TQ, getting knocked out at the group stages. The first LFL team not to make it to playoffs this time around. And I mean, they had their moments, but at the end of the day, they just fell a bit short.
Yeah, no, they did. And like you say, definitely must feel a little bit sad to be the odd one out from the region to not make it to knockouts. But I think, you know, Fnatic TQ, when it came down to it, they were the stronger looking team in this game, but it did end up being a bit of a heavy back and forth in that final game, and we almost did end up with a tiebreaker, which definitely would have been an exciting way to round out the day. But Fnatic did not want to lose out on that quarterfinal spot.
Absolutely not. Giving Super League a spot in the playoffs, massively important for the region. Organization-wise, of course, players will be representing them from other teams, but it was a case of, we call BDS Academy the outliers, the odd ones out. That isn't confirmed yet. Let's have a quick look at the standings just to remind ourselves of who's already gone home, who's already into the quarterfinals, and who we're looking at today. So K-Corp, X7, Bifrost, Fnatic, TQ, LDLC, and Unicorns of Love Sexy Edition are the 6 teams that are already confirmed into the playoffs, and then we'll get Group A finished up today for all of you. Currently, it's the LFL Seed Vitality B up at the top of the group with Ego Rogue closely following them, but Spandau and Zvezda, i.e. Red Star, they're both looking to try and mount some kind of campaign to put up a fight.
Yeah, I think particularly Eintracht Spandau, right? I think in their game against the Go Rogue, they really did have the foundations to actually take that game and win, but unfortunately they allowed the Go Rogue to scale in that game. They had their Corki, their Zeri, the Yuumi as well, and they couldn't really close out on the lead that they did have. And I think they are actually, no, not I think, they are our first game of the day. So that's going to be a very important one, because you think about it like this. If you win this game as a Go Rogue, you open up the gap between yourselves and Eintracht Spandau by 2 games. And of course, at that point, for Eintracht Spandau, they have to win both of them and hope Go Rogue and Vitality do not win for the remainder of the day. And with Red Star looking not particularly the most convincing, I think that's going to be a difficult ask.
This group is very quietly stacked, is something that I will say. You look at some of the other groups, Group B in particular, everyone was like, Group of Death, haha, these teams are all really, really strong. Spandau, Ego Rogue, and Vitality B, And of course, Venezuela coming through as well, as you said, maybe have been a little bit disappointing, but definitely not to be trifled with on their day. And this is what we're going to be looking at today. Starting out, AGO Rogue against Eintracht Spandau, that huge game. But I'm looking at the third game of the day, Vitality B against Spandau. That could be massive.
Yeah, I think especially if Spandau end up winning their game against the Go Rogue, all of a sudden that Vitality B versus Eintracht Spandau game is set up for basically, you know, Spandau to try and make a return on here, try and make it to that 4-2 finish line, because they round out their day against Red Star. And not saying that Red Star is going to be a free game. You know, they made all of their games for the most part pretty, you know, difficult to actually take them down, right? Whilst they might not have had that much venom, they still gave everybody a very tough time in most of their games.
100%. But let's move our attention quickly towards our first game of the day. As we said, it is going to be AGO Rogue up against Eintracht Spandau. And for these two teams, massive, massive result. You've already mentioned what's at stake in the group, but these two teams want to be able to... They play a little bit differently. We've actually got a graphic just to let you know a little bit about how these two teams like to play around the early stage of the map and how they like to play around objectives, because there's some pretty interesting numbers in here.
Yeah, no. I think particularly for Eintracht Spandau, they play a lot for Herald. In fact, so much for Herald, they didn't drop a single one in week one.
Well, they dropped a lot of Heralds, but just...
They didn't lose any Heralds, and they certainly dropped a lot. And of course, you can see that then also results in slightly higher plates per game, 7 over Go Rogue's 4. They do have a very high amount of dragon control, however, but they do sacrifice the early dragons for their Heralds. I think by the numbers, technically they have half by percent on Rogue. I can't exactly have the numbers, the flat numbers in my head, but that is kind of how they play, right? They play towards that top side to ensure they're picking up Herald, and they're using the gold lead there to ensure that they're picking up the dragons in the later stages of the game.
Well, let's have a look at these two lineups to see exactly who is going to be taken to the Rift in our first matchup of the day. Starting up with AGO Rogue, Sinmivak, Rabble, Nite, FLICKR, and beansu, of course, subbing in at support. This is a team that currently sitting in second place want to be giving the Ultra Liga that seed into the playoff stages.
Yeah, I mean, you know, last hope here for Poland and for the Ultra Liga, and you would hope that they can make it across the finish line. I think there will always be the questions of, you know, what if, right, with the substitute. I don't even think beansu has necessarily been playing poorly, but it's always going to be that lingering question, unfortunately, for this AGO Rogue lineup if they do slip today. Hopefully for themselves they don't. The EINS lineup, of course, Pride, Obsess, Special, Kynetic, Prime. Probably feeling a little bit robbed after their AGO Rogue game, but I think they know that they played in a manner that wasn't enough to actually get them across the finish line. They're going to be looking to ensure that they can get revenge here in this opening game of the day.
And I mean, it's going to be a very, very difficult one for both of these sides, actually, because there's power across the board. I was having a look a little bit at the stats between a couple of the players on each side. FLICKR has been terrifying on paper in this tournament so far. He's been far and away the best marksman in this group in terms of statistics. And you look at Yaskula up on Vitality B, definitely not being a slouch, but we've made our way into picks and bans. We've got AGO Rogue on the blue side from the Ultra League representing Poland, Eintracht Spandau from the Prime League, obviously representing Spandau in Berlin, Germany.
And opening out the banning phase by taking away Specials LeBlanc, not too surprised after the performances that he did have last week. Lucian will also follow up that one. More towards Sinmivak, but of course Nite can get his hands on it if he really wanted to. FLICKR too, down in the bottom lane. The true free flex for this team. Volibear actually being banned away on blue side, which is definitely a bit of an interesting take on the bans, which says definitely Rabble not feeling the priority, or Go Rogue perhaps as well, not feeling the priority on that champion. Zeri will now be taken away, which is obviously very standard. And we are starting to see, you know, a little bit of bleed in terms of the other AD carries still up. Jinx has started to sort of rise back to the top of the table in terms of the priority on the AD carries. Aphelios occasionally comes out still, which is a very big pick for FLICKR as well. Jarvan will be taken off the board, and of course you still have to think about things like Desire as well, the Misfortune, all of these very strong champions, especially for FLICKR too. Another big pick that he's had here at the tournament so far.
I would say that the Jarvan being banned away does suggest that potentially, and with Desire banned away, Misfortune has hit the priority pretty big time, because standing in the back having to be pretty immobile. Even the Aphelios is in a similar position, but we talked a lot about marks, but it's actually going to be the Ahri that's prioritized.
Yeah, and that does of course make a whole bunch of sense. Ahri has pretty much seen, you know, first rotation priority so far throughout the entirety of the Amazon European Masters, and now it'll be on Eintracht Spandau to find a response via Special as well. We've seen a lot of the Veigar, of course, come out into that pick in isolation. We'll see whether or not we do end up seeing it from Special, but for now, what we will get is Kynetic's Jinx. Like we said, of course, with all of the marksman bans that did come out, Jinx does start to rise in priority. Very curious to see whether or not FLICKR leans on the likes of the Aphelios, or whether or not he wants to go into that Misfortune, and we will just get that Veigar in the same rotation just so EINS can hide their jungle pick for now. But of course that does give Rabble the opportunity to pick his priority here in this rotation too.
Yeah, it gives him the opportunity to go for whatever jungler he wants. The Zhao is available if they want to go Diana for the AP, but when you've already got Ahri mid, maybe a little bit less in terms of priority, but maybe thinking about grabbing themselves that marksman before the pool gets pinched any further, because of course second round of bans, you're going to want to have something, and it's actually going to be the Ezreal as the solution. Not something that we see super often at the moment, but definitely quite a safe pick. Could allow for something a little bit more defensive like the Yuumi or the Na'Vi.
Yeah, it definitely could. And a Go Rogue, as a reminder, in their draft last week, they went for something, you know, super hyper scaly rather. This time around, this EINS with those hyper scaling champions. And right now, a Go Rogue, a little more snowbally through the mid lane via Nite's Ahri. Obviously, Ahri can just kind of do loads of different things. You can work as an assassin, a true mage. But with this Jayce, it starts to turn and look more like a poke composition, a composition that doesn't necessarily want to get in range of the Veigar cage, of the Jinx rockets or Zap. They just want to sit back and throw out their skill shots. And now what I expect from that final rotation in that B4, B5, rather from a Go Rogue, is some engage tools to capitalize on that. On the Eintracht Spandau side now, I want to see some more hard engage options to try and shut down this poke.
I'm looking at it and thinking, right now, Eintracht Spandau picked two champions that love to be hanging around, and now with a third, they've gone for a little bit of engage. They like to be hanging around objectives, like to be hanging around chokes, but Go Rogue going to make it very unpleasant for you to stay in any one position, because they're going to be throwing everything and the kitchen sink at you as we move into our second round of bans. Just having a quick peek, and it looks like we might get picks against Ahri removed by Go Rogue, and there might be a couple of jungle bans from both sides.
Yeah, I think jungle bans could definitely be the angle here for either side, and it's going to be the Trundle to open out onto Rabble. You could also see something like Lilia, but I think you're probably still looking at, again, you know, anything else that you would consider you don't want to have to deal with. Obsess's Nocturne being removed away, not too big of a shocker there. And I think from this point on, still looking, again, frontline tanks, anything that you feel like you don't want Rabble on, even if it's something wonky like a Sejuani or something silly, you just want it out of the pool.
Excuse me? What do you mean by silly?
All right. It's a silly pick. But Zhao actually could also be another ban.
Don't pick something stupid like Kane, as we see the Yuumi get taken off the table. So the face of pain on that one. But it does make sense to take away a couple of these, or at least the Yuumi away from the Ezreal, because that is known to be a very, very sad pairing. And the Skada is actually going to be taken off the table from Obsess. So there are still a couple of options available. The Zhao notably is around if they want to go for something like that.
I will say, unironically, Sejuani is countered by Skada and Trundle, but I'm not sure we're actually going to see Rabble lean on that one. There's the Zhao as expected here, and now Eintracht, I expect, of course, just holding that counter pick for Prime. We'll see what exactly beansu wants to lean on with that Yuumi taken off the board. If they want to go down the Enchanter route, right, they can, of course, go for something like the Karma. If they want something a little more flexible with mobility scaling, they could go with the Rakan for that sort of engage/disengage, but they're going to lean now on the Nautilus instead. And of course, we said we want to see a little more engage come out from a Go Rogue so that they can actually capitalize on the poke if needs be. Now it's all up to Rabble on what he exactly wants. I mean, the champion pool is really, really pinched. Something like Kha'Zix would be pretty fun, but I don't think it'll necessarily be the strongest into what he's looking at. But Rabble, in his time, has been known to be a bit of a madman with his picks, and he is going to go and take it up. So that's very interesting. I wonder whether we're going to get sort of like the W evolve first, just to sort of layer into some of this poke sort of profile that Rogue have. Would definitely lean into that a lot, we'll see. But very, very spicy. Not too often we get to see Kha'Zix in competitive play these days. Now over to EINS. I mean, Wealth their Oyster. Seems like they are hovering on the Sett. Definitely be pretty interesting into that Nautilus. Nautilus goes in, just send them flying straight back into the rest of the team. And that will be how Eintracht Spandau round out their composition. And I think not too shabby. They've got two hyperscalers in their in the mid and the AD carry slot. They've of course got the scaling and the engage from Pride on the Ornn. And of course, we've spoken about the jungle and the support. It's a very standard kind of front to back team composition. Not too much really to talk about. I think for a Go Rogue, the burden of execution is kind of there when you're running champions like Kha'Zix and Jayce. I think it's going to be a very difficult one for them to navigate, especially if we're talking about on a Go Rogue side that it's typically very passive in the early game, right? And I think a lot of these champions can lean into that sort of passive play style in the earliest levels, so 5, 6, especially, you know, Kha'Zix in competitive play historically wants to kind of farm up till 6. If he can find ganking opportunities, great, but he wants to get those evolutions under his belt. He wants to get that first item, and then the assassination threat really becomes real.
All I'm going to say is that Eintracht Spandau, after the 10-minute mark, buddy up. You're not allowed to go into the jungle on your own. I don't care if you're Ornn. I don't care if you're Sett. Because if you go to the jungle on your own, there's going to be an Ahri charm into Kha'Zix. It's not going to be fun. Just don't do it. Just stay with your mates. It'll be so much easier for you. I'm very fascinated to see how this Kha'Zix interacts, because we have a poke composition. You've got really, really heavy poke on the side of Veigar Rogue, but then you've got his Kha'Zix who kind of needs to be playing around pick. Is it a case of them getting everyone low and then Kha'Zix bundling in and getting those last hits, maybe?
I don't think so necessarily. I think Kha'Zix might have just been a response from Rabble in the sense of, okay, the champion pool that I have available here, given I think it was like 6 jungle bans by the end of it, is really, really pinched. Because I know Zhao into Kha'Zix. It's a matchup that Zhao, off the top of my head, does kind of win fairly hard in the early game. It's kind of hard for Kha'Zix to kind of match the skirmishing potential, but once he then has the evolutions, then things can start to go his way. We'll see though, as we are here onto the Rift for game number 1 of the final day of the Amazon European Masters group stage. And Rabble has Conqueror, so I wonder whether he's going to go for kind of a Bruiser build instead. I feel like the Bruiser builds for Assassins have really fallen off, obviously, with all the item changes. Away from a lot of the additional AD when you're lower HP and such. I expect it will still be lethality. Maybe a Conqueror for the early game to try and get some skirmishing working against Obsess.
Unless Rabble has been looking at the dark technologies in the week or so that he's been off. Of course, all the other groups are currently finalized. This is the last one where we're going to be getting information about who's making it to quarterfinals and beyond next week and the week after. But these two teams, it all starts here. Massively important game. Just to remind you, Rogue currently sitting second in their group, 2-1. Eintracht Spandau currently sitting third, 1-2. In the reverse fixture, Veigar Rogue managed to secure themselves victory. Question being, if they'll be able to do it again.
Yeah, and to also remind viewers at home, the repercussions of Eintracht Spandau potentially losing this game is there'll be 2 wins behind, both for Go Rogue and Vitality B, with only 2 games remaining. So that means a Go Rogue would have to pick up 1 win, and so would Vitality B, and they would be through to the quarters, and Eintracht Spandau, their journey would end. Only Unicorns of Love Sexy Edition would be representing the Prime League in the knockout stages. Junglers both starting on their red buffs. Curious to see how aggressive Obsess wants to get in the early game. Decent amount of setup inside of his lanes. And I'm also very curious to see how Go Rogue try and enable this Jayce, because if you remember, back to week 1, there's actually Pride on the Jayce and Sinmivak on the Camille, and Eintracht Spandau were not allowing Sinmivak to breathe on that Camille pick. I think he ended up being like 20 CS down, 0-3 at like 10 minutes or so. It was a heavy topside game from Eintracht Spandau. This time around the draft, much more centered, potentially around playing through mid, through the bottom side. We'll see what they actually end up doing with their early game plan. For now, Rabble going for that full clear. You expect him to just go bot to top for Obsess. Maybe he comes off the back of his top side into some early lane action.
Yeah, I'm just fascinated to see how Rabble's going to be interacting. As you mentioned already, the Kha'Zix, in competitive, more so than anything else, kind of won't be looking for these huge gank opportunities. Might be looking potentially just to shadow the Zhao. Is that something? Can Kha'Zix effectively counter gank, do you think?
I mean, if there's oversteps, yes, right? You know, you always have those kind of moments where maybe there's a brief window, Rabble jumps in, all of a sudden somebody's actually isolated, he gets all of that bonus damage off, and he completely one-shots whoever it is that is making that mistake. It's how I expect Rabble to try and play, do his best to, you know, keep Obsess out of his lanes, but I think it's going to be very difficult because no matter how you kind of slice it, until level 6, Rabble should be losing out in the 2v2s and the 3v3s. As we wanted to see Obsess try and get some early action going, and he's looking towards that bot lane on the stacked wave.
Luck is already giving a lot of respect. beansu, though, is being left under the tower alone. But they should be okay, because diving into a Nautilus and Ezreal at level 3 is not necessarily a recipe for success, but one plate is almost already gone.
Yeah, no, it's a very fast near plate takedown. 3 minutes and 45 seconds barely being crested. A lot of pressure already down towards that Eintracht Spandau bottom side. Not up a significant amount of CS, but of course that pressure will be felt. As both Nite and Special have the OKMO equipped. As that Minion Dematerializer will actually keep special in lane, and that should give Nite a fairly free recall. Shouldn't have to expend the teleport back into lane. You expect he will go back after he shoves that one in. And Rabble now, just after getting a little bit of information, should also go for a reset. There's nothing too spicy on the first sort of 4 or 5 levels. I think that definitely does play into how Agorog are likely wanting to play out this composition anyway. A lot of these champions, you know, spike 2 IMs in the case of Sinmivak and FLICKR on the Ezreal on Jayce. You know, Kha'Zix can start to get things going at 1 IM, depending on Nite's choice for IM as well. Ahri would maybe prefer to wait, but of course, being able to get towards side lanes, try and maybe get some skirmishing going, get some early resets going on that Spirit Rush always feels good.
Cresting up towards level 6 on that mid lane and top side as well. Of course, the Jayce up against the Ornn. Jayce is going to be poking and prodding Pride, but okay, we talked about it a little bit yesterday. We're not going to expose ourselves the same way. Ornn going a bit behind is okay. Ornn going 40 farm down and 3 kills down, a little bit less so.
Exactly, right? Like, Ornn maybe like dying, solo killed, whatever, teleports back to the lane, doesn't really miss out too much. Yes, that's fine. Getting solo killed and then dove and missing 4 waves, however, is maybe not as acceptable or feels good for the Ornn player. But right now, I mean, Agorog, again, with that Kha'Zix pick, they're just not really looking to pressure anything in the early stages. I really do feel like the onus is on EINS to try and, you know, pressure the side of Agorog. Even though they do have the scaling aspects, I feel like when you start to talk about some of the range that Agorog can leverage, it can be a little bit difficult. But of course, Eintracht with the Ornn pick can try and shut it down. But it will require a fair amount of gap closing. Those will be things to track once you start to talk about those objectives. Neutral objectives, the dragons, barons, of course. Zone control, very big thing. If Eintracht Spandau are first to an objective, I think Rogue walking in, even though they do have their poke tools, it's going to be so scary walking into cage, potential turnaround from Ornn. Even Sett, really. Chompers too. I mean, you can list it top to bottom. Yeah, the tools that Eintracht Spandau have for a situation like that. Don't necessarily want to be in it, but again, priority from the bottom side. Will lean EINS actually into taking down this first dragon. There's going to be the Hex Tech going down, so no Hex Tech Soul in this one. And Infernal spawns next, so Cloud, Mountain, or Ocean will be our Rift and Soul of game number 1. And I feel like a non-combat, or not rather a non-combat, but one of the more oppressive, or 2 of the most oppressive souls, kind of being out of the game. I think suits Agorog. I mean, it's hard to say. I think Agorog perhaps comfortable if they are going to be losing out so much pressure on the bottom side. And Eintracht are able to get an early Dragon stack going. They're going to feel okay about it not being either a Hextech Soul or an Infernal.
But on the flip side, Eintracht Spandau picking themselves an Ocean or a Mountain into a poke comp. It's no bad thing at all. It just helps them weather the storm a little bit. And with Eintracht picking up that first one, it's a bit of a weird one because neither of these teams have had a huge propensity to go towards these early dragons. It's not going to be caught up in the cage, but should be okay just taking a little bit of poke from Special there. So I think Eintracht Spandau have taken 2 early dragons before this game. By early, I mean before 15 minutes. And I believe Agorog, actually it was Agorog who had 2, and Eintracht Spandau had 1 maybe. Between the 2 of them, really very little interest in it, but we talk about Eintracht Spandau loving objectives. The Herald's up in 15 seconds. They've already taken every single one they can this tournament so far, but Obsess now on the bottom side, looking towards FLICKR, dunked back down from beansu on the side, but he gets a nice anchor through. Teleport's going to come in, and it looks like beansu might be able to get away. Ultimate from Kynetic says no. First blood for the Jinx. Prime's going to fall though, and FLICKR chasing on towards Kynetic. He's going to be cut off by Rabble. It's a double for Nite as Obsess moves back towards the tower. Not the dive they would have wanted.
Yeah, a bit of a scuff dive there from Eintracht Spandau. I think Prime wanted to get that suplex down and slow down FLICKR and then get the pull back onto both members, but unfortunately doesn't find the angle. And we'll see on the replay. He's definitely trying to angle to get beansu right next to FLICKR and get the facebreaker in, but it just doesn't work out, so they have to try and focus down the Nautilus instead of the Ezreal. Of course, FLICKR didn't have flash, so that's 100% who they wanted the target to be, and then FLICKR has free reign. After that teleport comes down, the dive is almost always going to result in 2 more members going down. And now Agorog, they're looking at this Herald. Eintracht Spandau are here on the top side with numbers, but of course no ultimate from Prime available. beansu has his. He wasn't level 6 during that dive, I don't believe. There's a bit of ultimate economy in their favor, but Special does have the primordial burst, and they could definitely look still to 3v3 it.
Rabble just going to be forced away, going to be dragged back in, though. A lot of damage coming on through there. Not but will land onto 3 members. That's a big one as Rabble dives away but gets hit by that Primordial Burst and will go down. Prime managed to nab the Eye of the Herald as well as Eintracht Spandau make their way out. Interesting little dynamic now, though. The Eye of the Herald's on the support.
Yeah, Eye of the Herald is on the support, so I expect that we will still see Kynetic get all of these plates, but I'm not even sure if it'll be from the bomb side tower because I'm not entirely sure where FLICKR was. He's had a wave stacked up against him. And Kynetic is just taking 2 solo plates by himself. It could have even been 3. Yeah, thank you, Observers. Beat me to the point. Over 1,000 gold up off the back of this plate. Up some XP as well. And actually, could we click on FLICKR? I want to see how much XP he's down because Kynetic got so much. He's almost close enough to hit level 7 off this wave, but that was so much gold just funneled into Kynetic there. And on top of that, they got the Herald on the top side, so a massive win for Eintracht Spandau. Nobody takes Heralds against these guys, and now it looks like with Prime in the mid lane, they will try and drop this Herald potentially, or just looking for some priority perhaps. But now, the fact that that tower is only at 1 plate, I mean, they can look to put it in the mid lane for special. They could look to maybe even rotate Pride down to the bottom side, put Kynetic in the top side instead, and then get more plates for this Jinx. Already very close to that Gale Force or the Kraken Slayer, depending on what Kynetic feels is more valuable in this game.
I mean, the Gale Force might be very, very helpful when there aren't that many tanky members around to really burn through with the Kraken Slayer. However, Jinx, as you mentioned, likes both, so it will be a value judgment. Has just been sent back down bot side, Prime there as well. And is there value in Sett running somewhere else to drop this Eye, do you think? Or is it a case of, hey, I mean, we've already almost taken this tower from Jinx, let's just confirm it and move on?
I mean, I would probably say if the Herald gets to a point where it looks like they're just not going to be able to get value out of it, like on anywhere else on the map, then yeah, just drop it in the bottom lane, give Kynetic the local gold if you can, and then leave it at that. But I think Rabble and beansu will do their best to try and stay with Prime on the map, and track him, make sure they know where he is at all points. There's now Go want to try and force him out the river.
Doing. The cage comes down, but Nite dodges away from it, getting a lot of damage out of root down onto Prime, puts up the shield and will be looking to back away, but Rabble diving on towards him. The angle lands as well, the dump back. Prime actually survives as they get the first kill of the fight, but he's going to go down. FLICKR on the side though, looking towards Obsess, who puts up his own ultimate to ward people off. The cage comes down, catches out the crab, but Pride was thinking about moving in, decides against in the end, and will just be running towards the mid lane. Fortunately, Prime goes down, so Rift Herald not going to be used. Obsess starting up the dragon.
Alright, so Eintracht Spandau do end up putting out on the skirmish and they will get this dragon. The Herald is still in the back pocket, but you can see in the picture-in-picture, Sinmivak is winning out on this plate. In isolation, he got 2 plates there for himself. Wave crashed. Pride won't miss too much because it was a cannon wave. In fact, is actually up in XP. Not quite sure by how much, but Sinmivak should be able to finish off, I would imagine, the Eclipse now. On that reset, he does.
Ooh, nice shot from Nite as members moving towards them from Spandau, though. Obsess and Prime in the neighborhood. You could tell that Sett really wants to find an opportunity to place this Eye somewhere that isn't bot lane. They don't want to be just getting 1 plate, but let's have another look at this fight.
Yeah, so you can see Prime tries to grab Nite back into the cage, of course, doesn't quite find it. A lot of the burst damage that Rabble initially put out, unfortunately, gets eaten up by that Haymaker shield, and you can see the Primordial Burst, I keep calling it Burst, ends up taking down Kha'Zix in midair. beansu, unfortunately, on top of that cage as he comes out of the stasis, is always going to be doomed to die. And it's just kind of a bit of a forced situation, I suppose, from a Go Rogue into Special, who's over the wall. Not really ever going to be focused on. Feels pretty comfortable in his position. Now has 2 kills to his name. And Everfrost, Lucidity boots as well, and that Herald will get dropped in the mid lane. And that's actually going to get 3 plates, because you can see that first plate isn't just about taken down just yet. That's Special. Yeah, just be careful of Rabble.
Yeah, the Rift Herald's only going to be able to get those 2 plates, but the third taken by Veigar just before the play does give a decent injection. There's about 30 seconds left before they fall off, which obviously removes that opportunity for investment, but it does mean that the towers will be much easier to take down, and with them looking so weak and frail from the side of Veigar, you've got to imagine that if bot lane and mid lane towers aren't taken for those last plates in the next 20 seconds or so, they're going to be taken pretty soon after.
Yeah, and the thing right now for Go Rogue is a lot of the champions, they just don't have the individual agency right now to be making plays of any kind, whereas Eintracht Spandau, they just do, and they're moving around the map. They're looking for a potential dive, but the wave's gone, and the response is pretty swift on this rotation from a Go Rogue. So no dive will actually occur. They won't be able to take down the tower. The plates will now fall off. But you can see Eintracht Spandau, they're looking to be proactive. They don't want to, you know, repeat the mistakes of week 1 where, even though I would argue they probably do outscale in this game, definitely one-to-one interactions, another conversation, of course, the context of the scaling. They don't want to allow Go Rogue the opportunity for their champions necessarily to scale really well into the game and then, you know, make mistakes on their end. We didn't talk much about the Dragon as well. There's actually a Cloud, Soul, and Rift available. So probably one that Go Rogue aren't too fussed to give up, per se, as long as they stay within relative gold of Eintracht Spandau. Probably feel alright as Sinmivak clears out this wave. Pride probably just gonna come out the bush and take the wave for himself. Not looking for anything too particular, though he's actually hanging around.
Sneaking.
Yeah, so I think the idea of this here is that Eintracht Spandau want to take down the top tier 1, and we're hoping that Sinmivak and Go Rogue wouldn't have a read on the map to have Sinmivak reset on this wave and perhaps stay around for one more wave, and then he gets engaged on by the unaware, by the hidden Ornn, the assassin Ornn, as he will now take his reset and probably meet his counterpart in the bottom lane. But this is all set up for the Herald, which has now spawned up. And because Eintracht had the first move up here, they should also have first move into the river if they so want it. And Pride didn't even reset, so it's just going to be an outright nubs advantage here on the top side for Eintracht Spandau, as they look to probably take down this Herald and continue their 100% control rate over this objective.
I was going to interject and say, Eintracht Spandau, first ones to a Herald play. Shocker, am I right? They really love this objective, and it does help them. It sets up the map so well for them moving forward in games, and while they currently have a negative win rate in the Amazon European Master Group stage as a whole, they are able to take down these early plates of the first Herald and open up the map with the second. Right now, that mid lane tower not looking super healthy. One Herald charge would be all it takes, but in the bot side, it is going to be Sinmivak able to secure that one, but it looks like it's going to be Kynetic clearing out the wave. Prime's in the wings, not looking to drop the Herald, this time in the pocket of Obsess. But actually not going to be looking to push forward as Mucker does turn up to defend.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like the reason why that is they want to go and contest the Dragon on the bottom side. Sinmivak, however, gets another tower to himself, as Special just about misses out on interrupting that reset. We'll try and stun Ahri out of the teleport as well. Very cheeky. Doesn't quite have the range for it. And Frost will also go wide, but the Herald actually, yeah, like you said, called out perfectly. Just go towards the mid lane, try and shut that one down. Rabble's on the bottom side, so he won't be able to smite it. So this charge should go through. Eintracht Spandau look to go and take that Dragon off the back of it as well. Rogue, very docile, very passive. Not looking to really contest a lot of these neutrals particularly heavily. There's only really that first Herald where it looked like they were trying to angle for a neutral. But besides from that, Eintracht Spandau just had complete control so far.
And the gold lead reflects that 2,000 to the good for the Prime League side, which isn't damning evidence of anything going on, but they've also grabbed themselves 2 Dragons, 2 Rift Heralds, and the towers are looking good their side as well. Special takes a laser to the face and will hop back away towards his inner tower, but for Spandau now it is a case of, right, you've got yourselves the early advantage, you'll set yourselves up for soul point as well by securing this 3rd Cloud Dragon. What are you going to do from here? Where's the next big inroad going to be made? Because that top tower is still standing, although there has been concerted pressure to try and bring it down. And past that, there's not that much else to fight over for the next few minutes.
Yeah, and actually, I want to talk about this kind of phase of the game, assuming we don't get any random skirmishes, because I feel like a lot of teams, at most levels, even up to the LEC level, do struggle with what I like to call sort of like dead time, or the sort of the lull period of time where, you know, the second Herald is dead, there's no Dragon on the map, and there's no Baron. A lot of teams kind of struggle to deal with, okay, what do we do? Do we just farm waves, have them bounce back and forth? For me, personally, my philosophy is go and play for the jungle camps. If you have these tier 1s up, for example, like how Rogue have just taken this one down, try and play for setup on those tier 1s, take them down. It's standing gold at the end of the day, things of that nature. But Eintracht Spandau only really have that top tier 1 to play for, and they keep on sending special up towards it. Kynetic's catching these mid lane waves, so I don't actually feel like anything is going to particularly be pressured from the primary side. Go Rogue have those 2 hours. I think pressuring tier 1 in the mid lane is going to be a bit difficult with Kynetic sat in the mid lane. Must you only really have poke, so you'd have to kind of find a decent map opening to have all of your poke members open up into the mid lane, and then try and chunk out Kynetic or anybody who's holding that mid lane wave to take down that tower. But now it seems like Eintracht Spandau responding to that top side push do get a wave back up here towards the top side, but they're not actually going to pressure towards the tower per se. Now a ping comes out. That special should be hitting onto the tower. Could be a bit risky, because I'm pretty sure from a Go Rogue vision, there's actually not too much working for them on the top side. So special could very easily get collapsed on, but he's finally got numbers coming to back him up. And this tower will now fall.
Yeah, managed to crack open all of the outer towers just before Baron spawning up. 45 seconds on that one. Both of these teams have been able to secure these so far in the tournament. Getting that Baron is going to be really useful for both sides in order to actually take the rest of the territory, make inroads and pushes. But you've got to imagine that there's a fight in the offing in the near future, because so far we've really lacked any big team engagements.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say, I feel like this favors a Go Rogue, not necessarily because of the sense of, you know, true scaling as in they outscale, but I think the fact that they're being able to, you know, approach their power spikes as champions, right? 2-item Jayce, the Muramana, only 50 stacks away from being completed. Lucker's tier, definitely a little bit low on the stacks, but of course, in terms of gold, it might not be too far away from actually picking up the Manuine. Actually, observes if I could ask for the gold, just to sort of track where we are at the moment in the game, because the gold difference between the two teams, only about 1.5k, but of course, you've seen players like Sinmivak pick up a whole bunch of towers.
This is very true. Just something I was going to raise is the fact that the Jayce is so quietly strong, hasn't really been involved in the game to a large extent yet. But I feel like the next time when we have a full 5v5 team fight, or even a big skirmish up around that Baron, if there's one that's going to kick off, if, say, Eintracht Spandau decide to try and bait it in, this Jayce is going to be felt, and Ezreal just going to use the ultimate to scout out. It's on a low cooldown with those Qs resetting its cooldown regardless, but just to let you know that Eintracht Spandau are not getting involved.
No, and actually, say Sinmivak quietly scaling up, right? Even though Special has been involved, he has a death cap in his inventory. With the Everfrost, he's definitely got a good couple hundred AP in his back pocket. And I mean, there's not really even a tank on the Go Rogue side. beansu, yes, he's definitely going to be getting a couple of tank stats in, but no aftershock. He's gone Glacial. Special kind of pick of the litter on who he gets the one-shot if they're in range of him. That's definitely one of the core parts, of course, of the Go Rogue side, right? You want to try and stay as far away from many of these members as possible. For Rabble, maybe looking to one-shot anybody that dives a little bit too far forward. And curiously, actually, Rabble did end up going for the Bruiser build, has the Gore Drinker. With his components in inventory, I expect that's also going to be the makings of a Death Stance. That's a lot of damage. And I want to know what he evolved. I think it looks like Spike Rack and Claws.
It'll be fascinating to see how this build pays off, just because it's not something that we necessarily see. I mean, we don't see Kha'Zix all that much, but even when we do, it's usually a more assassin-heavy, look, I'm going to find myself the priority target. I guess the problem being with this Spandau lineup, finding Kynetic, you've got to imagine, would be the... Oh, my word. The Jayce is being felt. The Ezreal ults were coming through as well. Kynetic has been found out by two abilities and will be forced to back away, but there you go, Rogue. Chasing forward, Obsess a little bit on his own, but the Dragon's going to be scoreboarding up in 20 seconds. Members of Spandau might be a little bit slow to it.
Yeah, and I mean, this is exactly the point I was making, right? A Go Rogue probably very happy with the last 5 minutes of gameplay by Eintracht Spandau. I won't say they necessarily inherently themselves slowed down the game, but they didn't do anything to speed it up, right? The momentum slowed down. A Go Rogue were able to kind of just catch waves for 5 minutes for free. And now all of a sudden you can see some of the poke aspects of the composition coming through. And again, if you just stay as far away as possible, allow Sinmivak to just layer in those shock blasts like that, have luck and potentially even find the true shot barrage, you can chunk out all of these carries from a distance. And that's where all of a sudden, that's why I say the onus was on Eintracht Spandau to try and get things going. They've got the Ornn, but that's kind of it in terms of their true hard engage. They have to try and get a little bit creative, perhaps, with Prime's positioning to get him in range to follow up on things like that.
Baron's gone up, and Eintracht Spandau just going to start it up. 23 minutes on the clock. 5 members available. Teleport coming in from the Sinmivak on the bottom side, going into the mid lane. So this could be pretty dangerous. Remember, they're into a poke comp. Ultimate for Ezreal will reveal it. Half health for a couple of members. I'm not sure if they want to do this. Prime is going to move out. The cage is put down as well. Prime going to be calling the Forge or the Cool God as the damage comes through. The Baron has been secured. Now Go Rogue need to find a way to take away from a couple of members. Prime is going to be called out in the pit. He will be the sacrificial lamb as Prime also fell. Goodness gracious me, that was brave, but Eintracht Spandau walk out with Baron on free.
Brave is definitely one way to describe it. They only actually get 2 members out with the Baron. Obsess and Kynetic both had to use their flash to get out the back of the pit. Yeah, Veigar died as well. I'm just not sure about that Baron call, man. I mean, I will say, maybe going for the turn, definitely the correct call, but Prime just goes in way too quickly. The rest of the team wasn't able to follow up on it. And Eintracht, yes, they run away with the Baron, but I mean, they lose the mid lane tier 1. You can see the Baron power play. It's minus 500 gold. Hopefully we get a replay to break down exactly how that went down, because I mean, just allowing a Go Rogue to walk into the pit and strip away the Barons. Yes, the Baron's off the map, but now again, we just spoke about how that stale map state, the stale game state, was already benefiting a Go Rogue because Eintracht Spandau just haven't been able to find a way to actually get on top of these Go Rogue members. Go Rogue are probably rubbing their hands together laughing.
It'll be quiet laughter though, because of course with Jinx having this Baron, also the Zhao, it does mean that pushing in could still be an option. There's still an opportunity if you want to group up as 5, and when you're a 5-man stack, 1 Baron is as good as 5 when it comes to push potential. Obviously you lose out on the stats that it does give as Kynetic. Going to be given that Typhoon. The Ornn, of course, means that we could play Jamada's favourite game of what are the ornaments called? I've just named that one, so that one doesn't count, but...
Okay. Gore Drinker is a ceaseless hunger. I remember that.
Nice.
Everfrost is ever night or something. Ever winter night or some nonsense like that.
So you were trying to just name all the ones you knew, and you didn't know the name of the second one you mentioned. But luckily, Prime is going to get called out to save your blushes. As team fight will be kicking off in earnest. Rabble's on the backside. He hasn't found a target. Will be able to take down one. Sinmivak taking down special on the Veigar. And now all going to be rooted up in a flock of birds. Has to dive back forward. Charmed up, taken out. Kynetic managing to speed away using the rift, the cloud rift, to keep him alive. But Go Rogue take the fight.
Yeah, I mean, a Go Rogue just get the fight on a bit of a drop of a hat, really. Nite goes in, finds the first member he can. Then the follow-up was just about nice enough for Go Rogue. I mean, again, the stale map, EINS are kind of just ARAMing into them with the Baron buff. It allows them to find this pick. Prime steps up one little bit too far forward. You see Nite try and go in, the Shock Blast comes in as well. They almost get him down by the flash, and you can see Rabble tries to go in on top of special, and he does eventually blow him up with the rest of the team coming in. Pride tanky enough to just about walk that one off for a little bit, but then decides, I think I'm probably going to end up dying here. And like you say, the Cloud Rift just about gets Kynetic to safety. And again, to reiterate the stakes of this game, if EINS lose this, they then fall 2 games behind a Go Rogue and Vitality B, who are still yet to play a game. And they only have 2 games left, so they'll have to win both of their remaining games, one of them against the undefeated Vitality B inside of this group, and then hope that Vitality B do not pick up a win. And the same thing for a Go Rogue. Looking effectively for a tiebreaker against either. That's a real tough ask, I would say. As Go Rogue have wrestled the control of this game now.
Yeah, I was going to say, the game seems to have turned tempo definitely with Go Rogue now. As Eintracht Spandau had the early control, they had the objectives, they had the push, but the stalemate that was set up at around the 16-17 minute mark really favored us. We've seen the call to forward from Kynetic. Needs to be careful. There's a lot of damage going down into Prime. Didn't even get the headbutt through as the Northern's on the side. Though Prime looking for something but can't find anything but his own demise, secured by Sinmivak. As the rest of Go Rogue just chasing forward, Prime goes down. Prime follows, and now Kynetic needs to be careful. A lot of damage coming up through. Rabble dives forward. Kynetic goes low, but the Kha'Zix can't find the final claw to take the Veigar down. Go Rogue take the fight and move down towards the jungle.
Yeah, they should be able to pick up the dragon. Rabble just oversteps, just barely. I mean, he almost takes down special. Just didn't quite have enough damage in the tank with the isolated Q to take down the mid laner. And now you expect dragon should be theirs. They'll pick up this tier 2. They're stripping away some of the jungle for now. Lucker's on top of that dragon. And again, Eintracht Spandau, the early dragon stacking, which doesn't matter because they roll cloud. It's no pressure. They didn't really have a solid position to contest the 4th dragon. They're not going to have a solid condition at all to contest the 5th. And it feels like now Rogue just using their range really well. And Eintracht Spandau, again, no, long-range engage tools, right? There's no Leona in that slot where Prime is right now to try and force these hard engages. The Sett, I feel like it's just not really working out for them. And just in general, they've not been able to really find angles. And I mean, Prime is actually in a pretty cool position to be in, right? He's kind of on a flank, but again, he comes in here. Look how disproportionately far away he is from the rest of his team as they try and deal with some of this dive. Just gets eaten up by Sinmivak and Rabble as the remaining frontliner inside of Pride on the Ornn just gets eaten up, and Rabble does his best to try and take down special. I'm not quite sure if he was isolated. It did look like the isolated animation. Wasn't quite able to take him down. But still, a Go Rogue, they win out massively on this fight. They get that mid lane tier, the bottom side tier 2. They pick up the kills. They get another dragon underneath their belt. And now they're just going to be able to set up house here. Top side of the jungle is probably just pitch black for a Go Rogue. They're going to have to walk into all this, but they don't care because they've got all the range and they're just going to walk down the mid lane instead.
They can just poke through to it. Eintracht Spandau maybe looking for the flank. The Ghost has been popped by the Ornn, looking for the call of the forward call. Will land it onto 2. Maybe looking for an engagement. Obsess has already gone well below half health. Same for the Ornn. Pride has to dive away rather than forward and will be taken low. Locker's going to be able to secure another kill in this game. As Sett knocks up in the air, so much poke comes down. The shutdown primordial burst lands onto Nite. There'll be a 1-for-1 exchange at the end of business, but you can see already how powerful AGO Rogue are in these engagements, and they're moving towards Baron.
Yeah, you can, however, see in response, some of the damage that can come out is pretty monstrous, right? You just saw how much damage Special put into Nite, removed him from the fight. And this is why I was saying, Agoro, they still have to play a little bit cautiously, right? They still do have to kind of play at range. They can definitely, you know, dive in when the time is right, but Special also has a Void Staff in his inventory, and very much so capable of bringing some heavy pain down. Looks like he's going into the Anatomas afterwards. See who he wants to put that one on. Eintracht Spandau, they're not out of it just yet, and they're actually going for a bit of a sneaky Baron on the reset timer.
I'm not sure about this one. Sinmivak is in the neighborhood. It is definitely a desperation Baron straight out of the play because Lucker on the side now. The poke will start flying off through. Can Eintracht Spandau secure the objective? Can they secure the play? They will be able to get Baron. Will they be able to get away with it? They're all hanging in the back of the pit, but they're being poked. It's Fish and a Baron as Nite dives in. There's so much damage being thrown their direction. Will any be able to make it out alive? Kynetic at the back of it throwing down bullets, but it's just carnage as Sinmivak's going to chase on Prime, looking for the ace. He goes over the wall. Will he be able to survive the dodge? Yes, he will, but no one else is out. They get Baron on basically no one. In fact, for AGO Rogue, could this be it?
It's the Eintracht Spandau Baron incident yet again. They lose 4 members, and like you say, this could just be Agoro can push through the bottom side. They have a wave. They don't have Baron. It's just Pride alive. This is it. Agoro are going 3-1 in this group. Eintracht Spandau have a mountain to climb for the rest of the day. They'll push onto the Nexus Towers. Prime, it would have to be a miracle. I don't think it's present.
He's going to do his best, but at the end of the day, it's not going to be enough. The ace, the base, the game for AGO Rogue. Ultra League hopes rekindled anew as it's a curious incident of the Baron in the nighttime. Eintracht Spandau, got to be asking some questions.
Yeah, you really do. I mean, it just seems like that, again, that moment after that sort of 15-minute mark where there is just not really too much on the map to play for, right? And that stalemate map state and game state just allowed the Go Rogue to reach their power spikes. And we saw at that final dragon, where it could have been Soul for Eintracht Spandau, albeit only a cloud, I think it was one shock blast into a true shot barrage into another shock blast, and Kynetic just had to go back to base. There was nothing he could do about it. And they just played at arm's length. As soon as they realized Eintracht Spandau, there's no venom, there's no bite to anything they're really doing on the map anymore, they just played their range. And even though you could definitely see the scaling and damage aspects coming out of Special, even Kynetic to a degree, it's not really enough when they don't get to do that consistently enough because Go Rogue just plays so far back.
And they were able to safely put out loads of damage, and at the end of the day, that was enough for them to secure the win. We're going to jump to a short break. When we come back, we're going to be chatting to Lucker, and then right on to our second game of the day. Sven Zvezda taking on Vitality B. Don't go anywhere. We'll see you in a few minutes.